Welcome to the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County Primary Election Candidate Forum for Edgewood Mayor. I'm Lydia Zapeta, and this is Bailey Womble. We are both co-moderators of this forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and our community sponsors, we welcome the candidates and the audience to this community candidate forum.
Before we begin, we'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. The League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tahoma. We actively seek inclusive and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities.
The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission for the past 103 years has been to empower informed and active participation of citizens in government. Candidate forums are one of the many ways we do this. Anyone 16 years old or older can be a member of the League of Women Voters. For more information on membership, go to our website, lwvtpc.org. That's lwvtpc.org.
The candidates in ballot order for Edgewood Mayor are Dave Olson, Christie Keith, Tyron J. Christopherson, and Ryan Day. The primary election is August 1st. If you are not yet registered or have moved, you may register or change your address online at votewa.gov. Again, that's votewa.gov by Monday, July 24th. If you are already a registered voter and your address is correct, your ballot will be mailed out July 14th. Your ballot must be postmarked or placed in a ballot drop box by 8 p.m. Tuesday, August 1st. This forum is being recorded and will be posted at the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County website at lwvtpc.org. Again, that's lwvtpc.org. Questions have been prepared by members of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and our co-sponsoring organizations. We invite live audience questions via text to 253-948-6029. Again, that phone number is 253-948-6029. Questions must be directed to all candidates and may be reworded or consolidated.
Our timekeeper today is Cynthia Stewart of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. She will hold up cards to let candidates know when they have 60 seconds remaining, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and when it is time to stop. Please, when you see the stop card, you may finish a short sentence, but don't push us. Please stay on gallery view so that you can see us and the timekeeper, Cynthia Stewart.
I'm going to raise my hand rather than a card. I don't have a card.
Oh, excuse me. She will raise her hand. Please do not talk unless it's your turn. Please mute yourself when it is not your turn to speak. The audience is on mute and cannot use the chat function. Just a reminder that civility is expected, and we ask you to each confirm that you agree to our ground rules, which among other things include addressing the issues and not making personal attacks or even personal comments. Please confirm by giving me the thumbs up. Thank you. I've received thumbs up from both candidates who are here tonight.
All right. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. After that, the order of questions will rotate and each candidate will be asked the same question. At the end, each candidate can make a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the opening 2-minute statements for Edgewood Mayor, the Edgewood Mayor primary is in ballot order. We'll start with, it'll go in with, Dave Olson. Unfortunately, Christie Keith is not here tonight. Then it'll be Tyron J. Christopherson and then Ryan Day. So we will start with Dave Olson.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dave Olson. First of all, I would like to thank you for attending tonight's candidate forum. That says a lot about your willingness to learn more about the current slate of candidates for mayor of Edgewood. I trust that tonight's forum will help steer you towards the candidate that best fits the profile that you are looking for. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Puyallup, and a few years after college, I met a beautiful young woman named Cheryl. We were married in 1990. 2 years later, we moved to Edgewood when we bought our first home together. So we've lived here in Edgewood for about the past 31 years. We have 4 daughters who are all now married, which means we are now empty nesters. I served on the city council for 2 4-year terms back in 2006 to 2014, with 2 2-year terms as deputy mayor during that time. About 9 months ago, after talking it over with my wife and a select few individuals, I made the decision to run for mayor. I think I will be a good fit for the role of mayor. My corporate sales background, my previous experience on the council, and my simple desire to help people will all work well in serving the 13,000 citizens that call Edgewood home. Finally, if I should be so fortunate to become Edgewood's next mayor, I will be prepared to resign from my job and hit the ground running as a full-time working mayor for the city of Edgewood. Enjoy tonight's forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Next will be Tyron J. Christopherson.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank both Cynthia and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My name is Tyron Christopherson, and I am a candidate for mayor. At a young age, I learned what hard work looked like, and that experience shaped me into the person that I am today. The value of putting in a full day's work instilled in me a work ethic that I applied to every job I've had. Having worked for the same company for nearly 3 decades has allowed me to build a strong network of collaboration and trust. Running a city requires both of these elements. My integrity and honesty have been critical to my success. Upon the completion of 8 years on the city council, I felt as though I had more to do for my community. I often told myself that someday I should get involved again and finish some of the projects that I helped start. I enjoyed the active participation in molding the city into the wants and needs of my family, friends, and neighbors. As someone who has been managing people for most of my life, I know I can bring to our city management skills that have been proven effective in both growing and retaining staff. I also know that with my proven sales experience, I would be the perfect representative and spokesperson for promoting Edgewood with all of its value and potential. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we'll have Ryan Day.
Hello, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I do appreciate this opportunity. My name is Ryan Day, and I am a candidate for mayor of Edgewood. I am currently sitting on the city council, and I have been for the past 6 years. Most important, I am married to Marissa Day, who is a teacher at Mountain View Elementary. I have 4 young kids who are students in this community, so I have really deep, well-established roots here. I started my professional career joining the United States Marine Corps. I was serving in Quantico, Virginia on September 11th, 2001, just 30 miles from the Pentagon. I served our country during one of its most tumultuous times, and what it really instilled in me is the understanding that we're all in this together, that there are very complicated issues that face us at every level of our government, and it's important that we all work together to tackle them. After the Marine Corps, I went to college, and then I started working for nonprofits. I've worked in maternal and child health, safe routes to schools, national security, infrastructure, and health for children with special needs. I think what I bring to the mayor's position is a wealth of experience in a variety of relevant areas that help me to see the complete picture that Edgewood needs in someone who is not going to be making the decisions, since that is what happens at the city council, but someone who's going to be guiding the discussions and make sure that we have well-informed and well-rooted in data discussions. So thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Thank you all.
I just want to clarify, can everyone see when Cynthia is putting her hand up, because as a timekeeper, that she is marking 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, and 15 seconds? Just want to make sure that you all can see that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Mr. Day, Mr. Christopherson, can you see that as well?
Could you try it again? I wasn't looking. I'm sorry.
Yes. Cynthia, could you please put your hand up so they can see? Because you don't. Okay. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Mr. Christopherson, can you see that?
I cannot.
Okay. Cynthia, is it possible for you to turn on your camera and for timekeeper so that Mr. Christopherson can see you?
I can, but I could just also speak. What I'm going to do, Mr. Christopherson, is give you a 30-second warning orally.
Okay, and then she'll put her hand up for the 60 and 15 for everyone.
Yeah,
Okay?
same process for everyone, except
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to clarify. Sorry, this is, okay. Now we come to the questions. Each candidate gets up to 90 seconds to answer each question. Some of the questions may be only 60 seconds. Again, live audience questions can be texted up to 253-948-6029. I'm hoping that we have someone who's on them. And the candidate order will rotate for each question. So that for question number 1, we will start with Tyron J. Christopherson. So the first question is, what are your budget priorities for the city of Edgewood? Why? And how would you pay for them? So again, what are your budget priorities for the city of Edgewood? Why? And how would you pay for them? Mr. Christopherson.
Budget priorities. I believe the most appropriate thing would be to, like we've done in the past, we reach out to the community and we ask for their wants and needs. But what we fail to do is actually act on that for the most part. We recently had a forum that we brought citizens to the council chambers to share with them where their monies are being spent, but we failed to really take action or show them exactly where those funds are being spent. It was very informative from a council and staff perspective, but it left the citizen wanting more. When it comes to budgeting, we should prioritize. I believe the safety of our community should be precedent. We should also prioritize bringing new businesses to the community and enticing them with various incentives that would demonstrate our want and our need as a community for them to be relocated, so to speak, to the city of Edgewood. When it comes to paying for them, we'd have to be smart. We do have 3 legs to a stool from a tax perspective, sales tax. We have various REIT and whatnot that needs to be used appropriately. When we pull from these funds, we shouldn't take from one if we're not willing to balance that budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Day.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I'll say the budget's complicated, and that's why we elect people who are going to pour through every single line of the budget in order to figure out where everything goes. Public safety has been highlighted as a need in Edgewood, and I'll say I'm very proud of the fact that we've budgeted for more officers than we have now because we contract through Pierce County. We've actually budgeted for 2 extra officers as soon as they're available from Pierce County. I'll say, we've spent a lot of money over the years trying to attract businesses, and it hasn't really succeeded at all. And I think one of the key things in budgeting is making sure that when we throw money after a priority or a project, if it doesn't work, we need to learn from that, and we need to budget smartly based on what we can accomplish. My priorities, I really think that public safety is a huge need for us. And that's not just police officers, that's infrastructure. That's the fact that we have kids who walk in ditches on their way to school because they can't walk safely on a sidewalk that we don't have. They're very expensive. We need to have conversations about how we're going to do that. One of the great things that I think we can do, and that I'm proud of with my experience in government, is that we can tap into low interest investment funds that are made available to municipalities that are below the rate of inflation in order to invest in our infrastructure today, make our city safer today. Actually, those projects left alone because we are at below inflation rates. So it's a matter of how we are going to prioritize.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
Well, I really agree a lot with what Ryan just said. I mean, sorry about that. That phone rings about once a week. Figures it would ring now. No, I mean, public safety is the answer to my question. What would I prioritize? It'd be public safety. And as Ryan already, he took all my points that I was going to make. It's more than just the police force. It's infrastructure. It's sidewalks. Maybe one thing that I would add to it is our speed limits, speed control, speed checks on certain roads. that we have some pretty high speed limits, particularly on 122nd, the back way. And I'd like to try to do something about that, because I think that would help overall safety. We've been fortunate, knock on wood, that we haven't had a lot of car pedestrian accidents, but I wouldn't want to see that. So, and the way we accomplish that is just prioritization. We just have to prioritize funds for related to public safety.
Thank you.
All right, question 2. According to the U.S. Census, the city of Edgewood has grown by 37% since 2010. What are your priorities for further development in Edgewood? Speak specifically about density and housing affordability in the Growth Management Act. And for this question, we will be starting with Ryan Day.
Well, thank you so much. This is actually the hot button issue in Edgewood that most of our residents talk about. I'll say that housing is difficult and density is difficult. The fact of the matter is we can't stop growth. We just can't. There are a variety of reasons, from the Growth Management Act to land policy to property rights. We can't stop it. But what we can do is try and control it and manage it. And I'll say that a council prior to my own, in fact, Dave Olson might have been on this council that did this. They actually developed a plan where they tried to focus the densest growth along Meridian, where we had the infrastructure in order to support the most dense growth, and also tried to preserve the rural-ish nature of our areas that are off of our main thoroughfare in Meridian. This is smart growth. This is growth that where we try and channel it in a way that preserves as much of the quality of life and as much of the community as possible, while still making sure that Edgewood meets the growth targets that are required by the Growth Management Act. And for those that don't know, if we don't meet targets that are required by the Growth Management Act, Edgewood can actually have our sales tax impounded, which accounts for 1/3 of our budget. So there are very real penalties. So when people say, well, just stop all growth, it's not a realistic option. And I think what's most important for an elected official is being able to listen to, but also explain based on their deeper level of knowledge, when maybe the simple solutions aren't quite as simple as we would hope.
Thank you so much, Mr. Day. Next will be Mr. Dave Olson.
Yeah, that's probably the number one topic that people ask me out on the campaign trail is, what are you going to do about all those apartments? But when I kind of sit down and have a conversation with those people, they usually understand, after being educated a little bit about how the Growth Management Act works. I mean, years ago, the state basically said, okay, Edgewood, you have to grow from 10,000 citizens to 20,000 citizens in the next 20 years. And how are you going to do it? And we have to present a plan to them that shows how we're going to accommodate for that growth. And if they don't like it, we have to make changes. And as Ryan said, we did make that decision 15 years ago or so to focus on increasing the density along Meridian. And basically we chose apartment communities and condos and townhomes along Meridian instead of cramming in 5 houses per acre out in the residential neighborhoods. People of Edgewood they like our horse farms and our pastures, and they want to drive past the emu sitting in the field out on 122nd. So they're willing to trade some apartment communities along Meridian in exchange for keeping the rural nature that we have out in the neighborhoods. And I also believe the other benefit of those apartment communities, it brings in the required density that some restaurants and retail establishments want to see before they're willing to invest in Edgewood. So that's an advantage.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And finally, Mr. Tyron J. Christopherson.
As someone who works in the city of Milton, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of the new residents that have been moving into the apartments and condos that do line Meridian. We've, having been on the council for 8 years, during the time when the bulk of those were constructed, unfairly, those residents would be mislabeled as bringing crime and drama to our community, when in fact, seeing the incomes that these people have and the rents that they're paying in excess of $2,500 per month, they are not the criminals that they have been appropriately labeled. These are some wonderful people that are bringing large incomes to the community, and unfortunately, we lack the infrastructure to allow them to spend those monies, those dollars earned elsewhere within the city of Edgewood. From a policy perspective, I think that the fact that we are, or rather hoping to maintain that density along Meridian and not bring lateral sewer lines and whatnot out into the rural communities that Dave and I and Ryan are living in, I think is a win for the community. And I think that the density should remain along the Meridian corridor so that we can, like Dave alluded to, see those emus, horses, cows, chickens, and ducks. It is a really unique experience to live in a city that has the high volume and traffic that we do. But it's also a real treat and reward to live in such a rural atmosphere.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question, we'll start with Dave Olson, and the question sort of follows up on the previous question, and that is, how do you propose to make housing and rents more affordable for residents of Edgewood? How do you propose to make housing and rents more affordable for residents of Edgewood? Mr. Olson, please.
Wow, tough question. I'm going to have to, work with the existing staff at City Hall to kind of, they have a lot more insight as to development groups that have approached Edgewood. But I think it's probably trying to maybe proactively go out and secure some more affordable housing. And I'm not sure what that is. If it's a smaller unit apartments, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area, but we just have to look at the options and go out and reach out to some people and let them know that we still have available space to invest in Edgewood. And we have certain things that we're looking for, and affordable housing is one of them. So I'm supportive of pursuing that, maybe to a certain extent, because I do believe we have quite a few apartments already along Meridian. And while there's some advantages to that, we need to be careful to reserve some of our remaining available buildable space for those restaurants and retail that we want. We can't put in all apartments because then there's no room left for restaurants. So.
Thank you. I see that we've been joined by Christie Keith. So welcome. And we are in the midst of questions. It's actually your turn. I'm putting you on the spot. How do you propose to make housing and rents more affordable for residents of Edgewood? And you have 90 seconds.
The housing and rent problem is a problem all over the nation, not just Edgewood. And I think that what we can do, there's very little that we can control because it's privately held by landlords. But what we can do is attract a community land trust to Edgewood to help build affordable housing. There's federal and state dollars available. I have good connections and relationships at the legislative level and at the donor level to get land donated for affordable housing. And I think that's really the only path for cities like Edgewood.
Thank you. Mr. Christopherson, please.
It's a really difficult question. My wife and I, being parents of twin 16-year-olds, I know when we purchased our house, it was worth about 25% of what we're paying in property taxes today. I question where will our children be living, knowing the incomes that are out there, or rather lack of incomes, against what home values are being set at in the city of Edgewood. Edgewood, due to its proximity within the county, has easy access to many, many highways, and it makes it a very attractive location for people to build, especially since we do have so much buildable land like it was alluded to, we can't tell builders what to do with their land. So it really becomes a challenge in living in one of the most expensive states in the country, how our children rather, and other people moving to the area are going to be able to afford a home when those homes are selling in excess of $1 million each. And builders have the right to build the home that they want to try and sell to the community. And so how do we attract people, and how do we afford have homes built for the right people that they can't afford? It's a really difficult challenge, and I don't know. Maybe we can't all live here right now. I'm sad about that, and I'd like to see something done, but we have to reduce the costs of what it takes to live here in Washington State.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Day.
Yeah, I'm going to be the one that says the unpopular answer, and that's that the biggest part of leadership is recognizing what you can do and what you can't accomplish. And quite frankly, the truth of the matter is there is nothing that the Edgewood City Council or the Edgewood State City government can do to meaningfully impact housing prices. The fact of the matter is we live in a large market. This is basic economics, supply and demand. We can add plenty of houses here in Edgewood, but the fact of the matter is that as a nation, since the 2008 housing crash, we have underbuilt millions of houses each year. After that 2008 crash, home builders stopped building houses in the same numbers that they were before, while our population kept rising. We have more people who need housing than we're actually building housing for, which is why we're seeing a lot more multi-generational houses, because people simply cannot compete because we do not have enough supply, yet our demand keeps going up. And that is what is driving our housing prices. And the fact of the matter is, Little Edgewood cannot do any. We could totally develop all of our land to the maximum density possible in Edgewood. And because this is a regional market where people from all over this area are looking for the lowest income or the lowest cost housing, it's not going to change anything. So what we need to do is
Thank you.
All right. Question 4, and for question 4, we'll be starting with Christie Keith. Question 4 is, what do you propose that the City of Edgewood should do to address climate change and climate-induced disasters? And again, we'll start with Christie Keith.
There's many things that we can do. First and foremost, we have to comply with the new state laws with our buildings, and we're working on that. It's expensive for small towns, but we're going to make sure that all our buildings comply with the new laws. The second thing that we can do is encourage less gas usage, natural gas usage, because that will help with climate change. We mitigate dust. We make sure that we protect our tree canopy and partner with Pierce County Conservation to plant as many trees as we can. Again, we cannot dictate what private owners do with their land, and our only path to helping with climate change is through our city building codes. So we protect our trees, and we ensure that the new buildings that are put up are Energy Star compliant and as energy efficient as possible. We make sure that the energy the city uses, which we do have direct control of, is as amenable as possible to mitigating the changes in climate.
Thank you. Next will be Tyron J. Christopherson.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What do you propose that the City of Edgewood should do to address climate change and climate-induced disasters?
I think that we should set codes, building codes, that mandate that homes be built environmentally friendly. From an insulation perspective, heating, cooling, and whatnot. But I think, if we want to start talking about the environment, one of the best things anybody could do if they're looking to get a new vehicle, or rather new to them, would be to purchase a used vehicle. I think we're misguided if we think that by purchasing a new vehicle we're doing anything friendly to the environment. Purchasing a used vehicle, that energy has already been expended. We need to purchase use items, I guess, as frequently as possible if we're going to try and do anything for the environment. I don't think it's realistic to think that a city of Edgewood that continues to grow year over year, that from either a fuel consumption, natural gas consumption, water consumption, that any of that will be reduced from an environmental perspective. We look at how we process our refuse from a recycling. I know my family is big into recycling, but at the end of the day, how much of that recycling actually gets repurposed into other products? It's a difficult challenge, and I think our state is taking some active measures to help the environment, but it takes one person at a time to make a difference.
Thank you very much. Next will be Ryan Day.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'll say that this is actually something that I've been addressing while I've been on city council. Just this last year, I actually pushed for us to develop cooling centers in the city of Edgewood for our citizens during our hot weather, and we've partnered with the community center in order to do that. You know, most of our buildings are old enough that they aren't built with air conditioning, and as we have more and more hot weather events, it's important that we do have places for people to cool down and be healthy. The other thing that I've been doing and that I think we need to do is we really need to be thinking forward. We need to be thinking about what we need to do to make sure that our city is prepared for what the new energy future is going to look like. So as we've been developing more apartments, more houses and whatnot, I've been asking the questions about are they putting the electrical infrastructure in place for electric vehicles? Because the state has a ban on that's going to mean we can only purchase new electric vehicles after 2035. We need to be forward thinking about that. We have passed the tipping point from what scientists tell us. Climate change is going to happen. We need to focus a lot on adaptation, but we also need to focus on how to mitigate the impacts as much as possible and start fixing the problem right now.
Thank you very much. And finally, Dave Olson.
This is an issue that I could foresee myself trying to partner with other neighboring jurisdictions and just asking them, hey, what are you guys doing in Milton about climate change? Or what are you guys doing in Sumner about climate change? Because I don't really know what impact little old Edgewood can make on a global climate change issue. I do respect we can play our part and contribute and do a nice job, but that would be something that I'd be curious what other local communities in Western Washington that are of a similar size, you know, what are they actually doing? And I'm all for copying some good ideas. Climate-induced disaster, you know, I would really want to figure out the Sumner fire, kind of forest fire that happened a couple years back, because I don't know if you can call that a climate-induced disaster, but I'm sure there was a lot of lessons learned by those jurisdictions, and I'd like to learn from those lessons and apply them here in Edgewood.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next question. We'll start with Mr. Christopherson, and this question is about the Edgewood Police Department. It's operated by the Pierce County Sheriff Department. Do you think this works well for Edgewood residents? If so, why? If not, how would you improve it? Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you. That's a great question. The relationship that the City of Edgewood has with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department is absolutely phenomenal. I've had the privilege of being a part of the hiring process for our last two chiefs, and I've known many, many officers, both past and present, that have represented the Pierce County Sheriff's Department and the City of Edgewood. What we get as a community by contracting with Pierce County Sheriff's Department, the benefits of that are unsurmountable. From SWAT to SWAT to water rescue, whether it be helicopter, airplane, bomb squad. What we get from Pierce County is absolutely incredible, and I would never ever consider changing or adapting that relationship to anything else that it is today. It's absolutely a wonderful handshake between the City of Edgewood and the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. I would also be real active in trying to get additional officers for our community. I do know that in speaking to the chief recently, They are having some serious hiring issues because, as we all know, the police have not been given a fair opportunity to represent themselves due to the opinions of citizens that are out there. Trying to get more police officers is critical. We need them in our community, and the citizens are asking for it, and we need to work hard to make that happen.
Thank you. Ryan Day, please.
Yeah, I'll say we have a great relationship with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, and that has both positives and negatives. The positives are that we have access to resources and specialized teams that a small community police force wouldn't have. And that has a lot of benefits. On the other hand, it also means that the small community of Edgewood doesn't have a lot of sway when it comes to how that police department operates and how we and what we want from them. And so it's, you know, I don't necessarily think that we're at a place that we want to have our own police department. I think that the Pierce County Department does well by us. But if Edgewood continues to grow and we are not able to exert the kind of influence that we need to, it's a conversation that we should have of whether or not Edgewood needs to get its own police department or join with another smaller jurisdiction in order to have more control over our own law enforcement and public safety.
Thank you. Dave Olson, please.
Yes, I'm very supportive of the Pierce County Sheriff's Department and the contract that Edgewood has with them. However, we need to remember they don't just have a blank check. You know, we still have a responsibility to the citizens of Edgewood to not pay too much for that contracted service with them. Again, I'm happy they're doing a great job, and I appreciate, you know, the additional resources that they bring to our city that wouldn't be available maybe otherwise. But at the same time, I would just caution and say, I believe there are a lot of good law enforcement agencies. I believe Milton has a good police department. And I believe that there are others. I mean, but again, I love Pierce County, but I just don't want to be too presumptuous that they are our only option. So we have a responsibility to the citizens moving forward to balance things and the cost.
Thank you. Christie Keith, please.
So our relationship with Pierce County is something that we benefit from because we don't have jails, we don't have a SWAT team, and a city of our size is frankly never going to be able to afford that specialized equipment to be able to administer the full spectrum of justice. So we have to partner with somebody. I think that's a given. It was suggested at the last town hall meeting by a mayoral candidate that we look at bringing our police force in-house, and I don't think that's the way to go. We simply can't afford it. The numbers don't support that. So I agree that our relationship with Pierce County is great. In the future, if we're not happy with, you know, the services that we're contracting for, we can look at other options such as joining with other cities. But I think that our contract with Pierce County is something that I support, and we should continue to do so until we have a better option.
Thank you.
Question number 6. What are your public transit priorities for the city of Edgewood? And for this question, we will be starting with Tyron J. Christopherson. Oh, no, excuse me, Ryan Day. I apologize, Ryan Day.
Yeah, so I actually have the benefit of having worked on public transit when I worked with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. Public transit is difficult. Part of the problem is that the more that we have an assumption that public transit needs to be self-supported by the funds that riders of public transit pay. And realistically, that has never happened in any municipality in this country, because simply put, the cost of paying for public transit is too high that riders eventually can't do it, and a system like that collapses. So a public transit system does need to be subsidized, and we need to work with our partners on that. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that a subsidized public transit system also gets cars off the road, and it means that you have to invest less in hard infrastructure like widening roads.
Thank you. Next will be Dave Olson.
I'm a supporter of public transit. I've got my Orca card, and I do frequent either the Sounder or the Link Light Rail or the bus system. And you know, the Sounder does not go through Edgewood, and the Link Light Rail is coming down into Federal Way, which will be nice. I think probably the biggest thing that we could work on is networking with Sound Transit to try to fight for our routes so that people can take a bus to the Link Light Rail or take a bus down to the Sounder. And I know that those exist now, but I think that's something to constantly be looking at to see whether or not we do have sufficient volume of buses running up there. Because that would probably be the most applicable thing to citizens here in Edgewood is readily available buses to get to those two systems.
Thank you. Next will be Christie Keith.
Thank you. I think that transportation is a huge word, and what we can do as a small city is really focus on doing what we have to do, which is getting as much federal and state money in to work on traffic mitigation as we can, but also focusing on multimodal transportation in all of our building plans, walkability, bikeability, all of the different ways to get people out of cars. So mitigating the amount of traffic also has to do with reducing traffic and getting us to a position where we can get to the Link Light Rail without having to put more cars on the road. And I think that the key to that is multimodal transportation. I also think that focusing on multimodal transportation also contributes to mitigating future climate change and also contributes to equity for Edgewood's residents. Not everybody can afford a car. Not everybody has the way to get to work through the public transport system. So I'm a big multimodal fan.
Thank you. Finally, be Tyron J. Christopherson.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the light rail program that's coming down through our community. The only problem is we just don't have the infrastructure with Sound Transit to get people from the City of Edgewood quickly and easily to that light rail station. Having ridden that train several times, whether to SeaTac or onto a sporting event in Seattle, I do see the benefit to it. It's nice to be able to leave your car at home and take that light rail. It's extremely convenient. But what we need to be able to do is get our citizens quickly and easily to those forms of transportation without having to drive. I know in the past we've had Sound Transit try and appropriate routes through the community, but it just never got the usership, mainly due to the limited access to those buses. So I am a big fan of light rail, and I do hope that the RTA taxes that we all pay so dearly every year can be spread across all of us here on the south end, and not just everyone Federal Way North.
Thank you very much.
Next question, we'll start with Dave Olson. How have you demonstrated your commitment to anti-racism? Give specific examples of working with marginalized groups. Mr. Olson.
Well, my wife and I and several of my family members serve with Seattle's Union Gospel Mission. And I think it's a pretty sobering experience to go up to Seattle or Kent or Ballard or wherever they might take us that evening. And it's a 4 or 5 hour shift, and it's a small part, but it is something that kind of puts things in perspective when you hand someone a pair of socks or give someone a couple of sandwiches and a couple of bottles of water, and they're very appreciative. I kid you not. I hear thank you, and I hear more thank yous serving with Seattle's Union Gospel Mission on their search and rescue vans than any other interaction I have. And that's one example of something. It's a small thing, but it's rewarding.
Thank you. Christy Keith, please.
Thank you. I ran the Seattle Children's Museum for several years, and one of the things that we really focused on was the issue of equity. When I first came to the museum, there were very few people of color on staff. And that's a problem. So over the course of my tenure, we moved to almost half employment at people of color. We added multiple languages to the curriculum. We added Spanish, we added specialized educational programs for the demographics that actually came to the museums, so that when you brought your child to the museum, they would see people like them and that spoke their language. We focused with several different communities to make sure that our educational content was culturally appropriate and culturally sensitive. We also added an entire new exhibit to feature the natives of the Salish Sound community. And it was really cool. We worked with native artists and artisans to tell the stories of the natives of the Pacific Northwest in their own words, through puppets to kids. And it was pretty delightful stuff, but it takes daily effort and a commitment from the entire group to really change culture on the issue of diversity and equity.
Thank you. Tyron Christopherson, please.
This is a great subject. Ending racism, that has to happen. And I think that the best way to do that is to continuously talk about it and to listen to those people that have been treated unfairly. Having had the privilege of working at the Tacoma mission through my employer, I've seen people of all social and economic backgrounds come through the Tacoma mission, and like Dave alluded to, when you're helping these people and they're so gracious and appreciative of what you're doing for them in their community, in that moment in time, it's a very rewarding process. Working for a large company, we consistently have a racial and consistent, diversity and inclusion training that reminds us that there are individuals out there that need our help and support. And I feel strongly that as long as we can continue to talk about it and take action against it, that collectively we can put an end to racism.
Thank you. Ryan Day, please.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I actually during my public policy career, I worked on this issue a lot. First, I worked on this with Mission Readiness, where I was the Deputy National Director of an organization of retired generals and admirals who were focused on improving educational outcomes for children from minority communities through advocating for programs like Head Start, for advocating for things like school nutrition in low-income schools to make sure that all kids, regardless of their background, had healthy meals. When I was with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership, I directed a team of 7 individuals working in cities around the country, where we tried to ensure that federal dollars to improve multimodal transportation were directed to the communities that actually needed it. Low-income communities, communities with high proportions of people of color, versus those dollars going to suburban affluent communities. When I was the director of government affairs for the March of Dimes Foundation here in Washington State, and we worked on trying to address birth disparities and outcomes for women of color. Because it's a tragedy. It is horrible that a woman of color is twice as likely to have a miscarriage in this state than a woman from an affluent community. And so we worked on policies around that. So I'm very proud of the work I've done on that. And as a member of the Edgewood City Council, I've pushed for that as well, both with the formation of our diversity, equity, inclusion subcommittee, as well as in our hiring practices, regularly asking, are we casting a wide net when we try and hire new people?
Thank you.
For this next question, we'll be starting with Christy Keith. And the question is, 17.6% of Edgewood's residents, nearly 1 in 5, speak a language other than English at home. How will you ensure that city services and civic life is accessible to all, not just those who speak another language, but residents who are visually or hearing impaired or are disabled? And again, we'll start with Christie Keith.
Yeah, I think that the city is making strides forward with many different forms of communication delivery. We're adding widgets to our website. We're adding modules, paying money for modules to deliver to sight impaired people and hearing impaired people. And I think that, this form of marketing and of communication that is inclusive is multi-pronged. It's not just adding another language. It's making sure that you're using upper and lower case for dyslexic folks. It's making sure that you use every image you post has a caption on it, so that the text-to-speech readers can read what the picture is if you're sight impaired. And I think that I would make sure that the budget includes money, not only for technical expertise and technical software to make sure that these multiple modes of delivery are available, but I would also continue to work inside City Hall to make sure that all of the staff is sensitive to these issues and includes disability issues, all forms of communication disability issues in their daily work.
Thank you. Next will be Tyron J. Christopherson.
Another great question. With recent enhancements at City Hall, it's clear that the city is trying to adapt and embrace the issues that many of our citizens have, whether it be text on the screen or offering hearing and sight information to these individuals. This is a huge change for our community. One of the things we should also do is, since we are seeing a large influx of citizens from other nations that are not coming here with the proper language skills to effectively communicate their wants and needs, is we should embrace a language line program so that we can have these bilingual individuals or people that lack the bilingual skills to appropriately, again, communicate their wants and needs. It's something that we use with my employer, and it's really proven effective. And as long as we are keeping our citizens and their wants and needs at the forefront of all that we do, we should be easily able to reduce that 17.6%.
Thank you. Next will be Ryan Day.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. I'll say that I actually have a 14-year-old son with severe disabilities, so I am used to seeing how the world is not designed necessarily for people that don't have typical abilities. And I'll say I'm very happy that one good thing that came out of the pandemic is that we implemented and we've made a commitment to keeping Zoom meetings for our official city meetings, so that people who can't necessarily make it to our city meetings are able to remotely attend and participate, including for elected office. For the languages out there, I'll have to say, I think Tyron had a great suggestion with a language line. If we don't already have that in place, we need to get. But beyond that, I think what hasn't been mentioned, what really needs to be focused on, is that a lot of the people coming to our community who do speak a different language at home are Ukrainians. We have a very large Ukrainian community here, and they have community groups, and we can reach out and talk to them and actually talk to them about what we can do to enable their outreach to us. This is one of those things where oftentimes policymakers have a tendency to think top down rather than bottom up, and going out and asking the community who's most impacted by this is probably the very first step that we should be taking.
Thank you. And finally, Dave Olson.
Excuse me. My initial response to this question is to go to the two different groups. And the first group I'd go to is educators. I think our teachers and our educators in our school system, I think they're dialed in better than anyone to know how to meet the needs and work with people that speak a second language or speak a second language at home. So that 17.6% that you reference, I think I'd be curious what the educators and the teachers, what advice and suggestions they would have for us as a city, the city of Edgewood. And I'd also go to those 17.6%. You know, Ryan referenced the Ukrainian church. I'd want to go meet with that pastor there and figure out, hey, how can we as a city do a better job of kind of meeting your parishioners' needs within your church, since a lot of them don't speak English at home as well. So I would ask questions, partner, learn, and educate myself through educators and through the actual people groups themselves.
Thank you.
So we come to the last question, and we'll start with Tyron Christopherson for this one. What is your plan to reduce traffic accidents, speeding, and congestion in Edgewood?
Wow, that's a really hot topic for our community. You know, when I was on the council, we were very proactive around reducing. We listened to our constituents, and we did take active measures around reducing the speed limits in our city. Most of our roads are now at 25 miles per hour. The only ones that are at 35 are 8th, 122nd, and Meridian. I recently spoke to a friend who lives along 8th Street. He calls it I-8. His initial reaction to the speed is that he'd like to see it drop to 25. Now, for someone that travels 8th Street frequently, 25 miles an hour is really, really slow. One of the things, though, that he asked for would be to, rather than having school cameras only operating during the school year, have those cameras actually functioning all year, which I think would be very beneficial to our community. What I also think is that we should not have any tolerance when it comes to speeding in our city. If you live in the city of Fircrest, you know that you do not speed. Anyone who travels through Fircrest knows that you do not speed through that community, because you will be given a ticket. And while I'm not thinking that we should be just this, hard, fast city where there is no tolerance, but we should not allow people to speed routinely through our community. And when it comes to roundabouts, those are a traffic mitigating opportunity for us. While I'm not a huge fan of them, they do function, they do work. And I would suggest that we do pursue adding roundabouts on some of our major roads as well.
Thank you. Ryan Day, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'll say I've been a huge proponent of roundabouts, probably the most vocal person on the city council. Back to my time with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership, I learned very quickly that those are one of the best interventions you can make in order to reduce speed, reduce traffic accidents, and make pedestrians safer. I'll say that they're expensive, and it's a tough conversation that we need to have. Where do we need them, and where are they just a nice to have? I'll also say that we need sidewalks around our schools and around our parks. We don't have them. We have kids walking in ditches or walking on roads with cars going 40, 50, 60 miles per hour next to them. I'll say, I'll also look at the data. The Freakonomics organization recently did a story called "How to Get Away with Murder," and it was about how pedestrians get hit by cars and what would make communities safer for pedestrians. And the answer was cameras. And I think that was a great suggestion. We really should have speed cameras in more places. Now, there are certain state laws that limit what we can do, but I think we really need to proactively look at what we can do to start stepping that up, because, we put in school traffic cameras and we had a whole lot of speeding when they first started, and then it dropped down really quickly because people got tickets, they had to start paying, and they knew not to speed there. Well, let's make it so they know not to speed in a lot of other places too.
Thank you. Dave Olson, please.
I personally would like to see maybe a little bit more patrol efforts along 122nd. We have the speed limit sign so people know how fast they're going, but I'd like to see some officers parked there and hand out some tickets. I don't have as much sympathy for someone going 60 down 122nd. I have a lot less sympathy for them than I do for someone going 26 miles an hour in the school zone and gets a red light or a school camera ticket. So I'd like to see that we kind of put a little bit more effort, particularly along 122nd. And I'd also have to do a kind of an analysis of the data. I can't speak to where the accidents are happening. So I wouldn't want to be presumptuous that I know where the hot spots are for car accidents. And the last thing that I would say, there was a little girl, Mary Iannuzzi, that was killed at a school bus stop about 20 years ago. And I think she's probably the only person in Edgewood's history that's been a car pedestrian death. And so I would want to proactively go after our school zones and make sure that we have safe school bus stops.
Thank you. Christie Keith, please.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. The traffic cameras do decrease. Our data is already clear. They decrease recidivism for speeding. So I think that that is a very valuable tool. I think that more enforcement also pounds that message home, and I support that. I will add a couple of things though too. I mean, the way that you can really reduce speeding is through code and building. And when we build, we should follow all the ergonomic clues that big cities use to reduce traffic. Narrower streets reduce speed. There's visual clues that give drivers the impetus to slow down just based on the infrastructure. And I think that we can implement those fairly cheaply and fairly easily and continue to do so. Traffic calming measures. We are good thus far about adding traffic calming measures where they are needed. My driveway has been the unfortunate landing spot for 4 wrecks thus far in 2 years. And that's because people speed around that corner. The city of Edgewood immediately put in these big, giant yellow bollards as a visual deterrent to speed, and it's working. We should do more of that. I think the other thing that we can do is really support the parallel road. The more Edgewood traffic that is not on Meridian for daily business, the less we are bothered by the speeding there. And so I would like to be able, to go about my daily business in Edgewood, not having to have to get on Meridian. And so support for the parallel road as well.
Thank you. Now we come to the closing statements. And we will start with Christie Keith and then Ryan Day, Dave Olson, and then Tyron Christopherson. For these closing statements, each candidate has up to 1 minute for their closing statement, and we're changing the order, as I said. So we'll start with Christie Keith. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I'm a long-time management consultant. I specialize in capacity management and high growth situations. So looking into the future is what I do for a living. And I think that Edgewood is on the precipice of an explosion of growth. We've already seen some of it, but there's more coming. And I think that it is critical to the livability of Edgewood that we do everything within our power to forecast and mitigate the problems that come with growth. And I believe that my experience contributes to that. And I am proud to ask for your vote.
Thank you. Ryan Day, please.
Yeah, I'll say, I hope you'll vote for me because I have strong roots in this community. I have the experience necessary to navigate the many different complicated policy discussions that we need to have. And quite frankly, I don't cower to public opinion. And anybody who knows me and who has seen our city council meetings knows that. I tackle issues head on. I tackle tough conversations head on. If I don't agree with you, I'll explain why. But if I can't explain why I don't agree with you and you have some data, I'm going to change my mind. And I've done it many times. And I think that's the kind of leader we need. And I hope you'll vote for me.
Thank you. Dave Olson, please.
Well, thanks again for attending tonight's candidate forum. I hope you learned a little bit more about me and the other candidates. If you have any further questions or comments, please reach out. I'd love to talk about life here in Edgewood. Finally, Edgewood's vision statement is to be a unique, safe, and prosperous community of neighbors. I feel that I have the right skill set, the appropriate background, and the proper disposition to uphold that vision statement for all 13,000 citizens. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Tyron Christopherson, please.
Having an enjoyable and safe community for our families and children can be achieved by managing and planning for growth. Prospective businesses are looking at Edgewood. We need to demonstrate that we are capable and willing to accommodate their needs while keeping our citizens' best interests in mind. I'm confident as a father, husband, and an effective leader, make me the ideal candidate for mayor. I'll work hard for you so Edgewood will be the city that inspires change and encourages growth that we all can enjoy. Thank you for your vote, and good night.
Thank you all.
Once again, in ballot order, the candidates for Edgewood Mayor are Dave Olson, Christie Keith, Tyron J. Christopherson, and Ryan Day. Your ballot will be mailed out July 14th. Be sure to vote early and no later than August 1st. We would like to thank the candidates who participated, the timekeeper Cynthia Stewart, Tacoma-Pierce County League of Women Voters, and our community sponsors, the Affordable Housing Consortium, the AAUW Puyallup, the Latinx Unidos of South Sound, NAACP of Tacoma, Sumner Waller Community Association, and the Tacoma Urban League.
You can see other League of Women Voter candidate forums at lwvtpc.org. That's lwvtpc.org. Read your voters pamphlet and look at vote411.org. That's vote411.org, where you can find answers to questions posed to all candidates running for office. Read the candidates' websites and do all that you can to be an educated voter. And don't forget to vote by August 1. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.